Is this a shared call?
It is.
It is. 5 minutes.
Tēnā koe.
Tino Terakatini.
Tēnā koutou e te manuhiri tuārangi. Nau mai, hara mai, ki te paramata e takatū nei. Tēnā koutou katoa. Mr. Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to speak at this, the final reading of these two bills for Maraeroa A and B. Mr. Speaker, may I acknowledge the claimants with us today, those descendants of eponymous ancestors of different but related iwi. And this is the uniqueness of this claim. The claimants are related by whakapapa to common ancestors who roamed between Taupō-Niriatia and Kāwhia and Maunga Tautiri long before the treaty was signed in 1840. These illustrious tupuna go back hundreds of years, before Captain Hobson had even heard of Korora Rāreka, the Bay of Islands and Waitangi. They go back to a time of the extended whānau of Raukawa and his sons and grandsons, and the relationships they had with the lakeside peoples of Tūwharetoa, who were the descendants of Tia, of the Te Arawa canoe, and Raukawa being of the Tainui waka. And while the decision to allow a claim that for all intents and purposes predates the treaty, the reality, Mr. Speaker, is that this type of historical kōrero of whakapapa and whanaungatanga is common throughout all Aotearoa. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, there is no Māori history without whakapapa. The descendants of Maraeroa A and B acknowledge the special nature of this settlement and have acknowledged the leadership of Te Maru a Rereahu. The descendants also have interests in other claims via their separate iwis, such as Raukawa, Maniapoto, Tainui waka, among others. Mr. Speaker, may I make mention of a particular area of interest for me in this whole affair, that is the Maraeroa settlements, and that is the work of the Crown Surveyor's discrepancies in surveys and the survey costs. It's a real mamai that has really hurt these descendants, these whānau. And as Mr. Young mentioned, it goes to the heart of irresponsibility of the Crown in the past. In 1866, surveys for the block were incomplete and only sketch plans were available. The absence of proper surveys caused discrepancies. Consequently, there was alienation of land and therefore alienation of the owner's mana. It seems to me, Mr. Speaker, the work of Stephen Percy Smith, Surveyor General, who went on to become an ethnologist and recorded a lot of Māori history, needs to be called into question. For want of not following a ridgeline to its conclusion or a creek to its source, these claimants have been alienated from thousands of acres, 4,200 to be exact. I'm not calling into disrepute his honesty in what he recorded, but how he recorded it. Mr. Speaker, the Crown's mistakes has led to people being given mana, being named on ownership lists, only for another inquiry to take that mana away by the removal of those names. Back and forward it went, on, off the list, not satisfactory at all. Mr. Speaker, I'll make mention of the survey costs and how they became a burden for most of the owners. The only way out from such a burdensome debt was to alienate their land, an outcome all too inevitable and seemingly underhanded. Now, Mr. Speaker, I mentioned in my second reading speech the role of whakapapa and how the hapu that settled the boundaries between iwi were generally takawainga families that joined one iwi to another. This is true of all takiwā and rohe throughout the motu, and the uri of this bill are no different. But I make the point that this case is for all Māoridom because, sir, to understand again and acknowledge whakapapa is to understand and acknowledge Māori history. Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to echo and support tautoko the comments that have been made by colleagues around the House in terms of the settlement and the significance of it, of this historic occasion, and I commend this bill to the House. Kia ora tātou.
Mr. Speaker.
If there's no other person taking that shared call,